My wife and I sold everything we owned. I quit my job. We left to travel the world full time for a year. Today, we're going to be talking about what happens when you stop doing what you're supposed to do and start doing what actually works for your family. Society hands dads a blueprint, get the degree, climb the corporate ladder, buy the house, coach the weekend team. That works for a lot of people, but that didn't work for the three of us here. So before we get into it, I want to ask you guys, what is one thing that society told you a good dad does, but turned out to be complete nonsense?
I wouldn't say it's nonsense, but it's certainly worth thinking about and weighing. But like, it's getting a degree. It's not for everybody, especially in today's age where you can learn so much at home on AI, Claude, or on YouTube.
Yeah, and the question, of course, being how are people going to pay for their degrees when they graduate, right? With which job? Hopefully one that's related to those degrees. I would say, Jordan, that the one that for me was the biggest mold breaker was certainly the idea that dads are supposed to be working every second of every day. And if you're not providing, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And if you're not taking time for yourself, then that's some sort of self-sacrifice that you're supposed to do. And that's just not true. We live in an era now where there's many ways that you can find time for yourself to balance, to discover what's important to you, and to be there for your family in far more important ways than you could be if you didn't.
But I think what's so hard, John and Jordan, is that I think it's easy for us to say it at our age and we're parents, but a lot of it for me had to come through experience. I had to come through when I realized what my values were, what was truly important to me. Because when I was in my 20s or even in my early 30s, I was doing what I thought was important to me. And so I think to break the mold, you really got to figure out, kind of like Jordan's point, what are your values? What fills you up? And especially if you already have a family, have a partner, it's what are the shared values that you guys can attack together?
Yeah, I started down this path. I went to college, I got my degree, I graduated, and I started in the corporate world. But all the while I was doing it, I knew that's deep down, that wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. And I can't explain it. It's not something that, is easy to explain to other people because you're technically doing the right thing, right? You're getting the degree. But when I was in college, I just hated it. I look back on those moments, and if I would have trusted my gut, it's taking a massive risk, right? Dropping out of school or not, fully getting the degree. You don't have that to fall back on. But if I would have started a business way earlier on in life, I feel like I'd be so much further ahead now. And so it's one of those things. I love the quote, the people who tend to get the luckiest are the ones who take the most risks, right? In order to really have a massive break in life, in career, business, whatever it is, you have to take some sort of risk.
I mean, it's just like playing baseball. The more at-bats you have, the more hits you're going to have. But yeah, it's easier said than done. Again, it took me over 40 years to really kind of share or kind of become who I thought I always wanted to be. So it's, I think if there's anything to take away from this episode is hey, like Jordan said, you don't have to wait. Gosh, I could only imagine if I started taking more swings early on.
Yeah, my own journey through school was an interesting one. Coming from a less resourced background, going to college wasn't really an option for me right out of school, but it was something that I did later on. I got my bachelor's degree in my late 30s, early 30s. I got my master's degree around the year I turned 40. My midlife crisis was an MBA. And interestingly enough, I accidentally lived the paradigm I think you're describing here, Jordan, which is I was getting the practical knowledge and then going back and living in an old paradigm, getting the degree to prove that I deserved it. And that always led to a really strange imposter syndrome that basically said, even though you in many ways already practiced a lot of what you're learning, the theory is more important. And so you still need to go and take courses to be eligible, because until recently, we've lived in a world where if you couldn't click yes on do you have a bachelor's degree, or in many cases, yes, do you have a master's degree, most applicant tracking systems wouldn't even let your resume be seen in the first place. And now we are so far past that even seeing that in an applicant tracking system feels like I'm applying in Aramaic. It might as well be. It's a dead language.
But it is so crazy how quickly that changed, because we're just talking about a couple years. But yeah, and so, I think if there's ever a time to think about breaking the mold, it's now. When everything changes, change everything. And I think everything around us is changing. It just kind of, hey, if you're thinking about you need permission to go for what you think you want to achieve or who you want to be, it's a good time.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit more about some of those risks that both of you guys have taken in your lives as well, because obviously my risk is dramatic, right? Most people aren't going to sell everything and leave everything and just go be a free spirit traveling the world. But John, a big risk that you took in your corporate life is you had a massive opportunity to take a job in China, and you ultimately decided to turn that down. Talk a little bit about what went into that decision-making process and, what transpired after.
Thanks for that tee up, Jordan. It was, as a little bit of backstory, the situation was I had been doing a lot of work building out leadership hiring structure in China with Apple. Really exciting time. This is 2013 into 2014 into 2015. This was a time when most companies were trying to establish a foothold in mainland China, specifically Beijing, Shenzhen, Guangzhou. And so this was a really, really fun, really exciting time. It was also the absolute prime time for my professional momentum to be building. And I got a gift of clarity that I certainly didn't hope for, but that was somebody in my immediate life had reached a point with some health concerns. There was a completely binary choice to make. Either I pursued the career or I stayed where I needed to be to help that person. And that person was counting on me. There was really no middle ground. And so I chose to be there. And there's mental health issues here that are at play with some of the cast of this particular production. It basically meant that I needed to be there a lot and I needed to be focused in a way that made that job impossible to do anywhere, from here, from there. And this was boots on the ground. You're going next week and you are living there and you're moving your family there. That for me was a major departure because my whole mold is this corporate mold. I've lived in the corporate world and come up through large companies like Apple and Amazon, smaller ones like REI and Safeway, which is where I had got my first job pushing carts when I was a wee little John. But that moment of breaking my own mold, my own path, my momentum, it forced a complete identity shift because I was no longer the guy who would do anything for the company. I couldn't be anymore because I had made a choice that ran so conflict to that I could never be that again. It was done. And I don't regret that at all. It was the best choice I had ever made. And it was the hardest choice that I had ever made at the time. Having made that same choice many times since, it gets a lot easier every time. And kids, they give you that clarity. So it's a mold that I'm so glad that I broke. It just hurt when I did it.
In terms of, I like to think in a literal sense of climbing the rungs of a ladder in the corporate world. How many rungs would you say you would have climbed up if you were to accept that position?
Well, at the risk of getting too deep into like the HR weeds, if you use what's called a Radford classification, you have all these like levels. A vice president in most companies would be an L10, something equivalent to that, with senior vice president / executive vice president, then C-suite, then CEO, top level C-suite president. This would have been equivalent to most companies L10 or L11. And though this was a director titled role within Apple, so that would have been, 1.5 ladder rungs at the time. But in like the broader picture around the world, it probably would have been worth 3 or 4.
I think that's important to paint the picture because the mold of somebody in the corporate world is when you get the promotion, you take the promotion. You don't think twice about it, right? You take the extra pay increase, you take the extra responsibility. And so turning that down isn't something that's easy to do, but sometimes there are things in life that are more important. And that's when breaking the mold is extremely important.
Absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes it's when there's something hard and sometimes it's when there's some impossible adventure ahead and you're making the bold choice like both of you guys have, Jordan, with you choosing to start counting countries and Jeff with you deciding, hey, you know what? I'm going to go do this thing called the Beast Games. We'll see how it turns out. How did that decision look for you, Jeff, when you were looking at that applicant form for the first time? Like what were you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, it's again, for me, breaking the mold or getting into the mold started in my teens. Like when I think back when I was 13, I was in a musical and loved it. And then I did another musical the next year. But then, I got into high school and I was playing competitive baseball, competitive football. And I just kind of separated creative from competitive. Like I didn't think those two blended or I couldn't make space for them. So I played football in college and I kind of, hung up my tap shoes. I don't tap. I wish I could. But it wasn't until I was 30 and a good friend of mine shared that she was the creative director for a musical. And I'm like, oh, I said a line from the musical. It's a musical my mom and I went and saw when I was young. And she's like, you should audition. And I said, okay, where's the show? Like, oh, it's in San Diego. I'm like, okay, great. I'll audition. I lived in Ohio at the time. So I auditioned. I got the part and I flew there on the weekends and and I would fly home, red eyes, and it filled me up. And I kind of go, oh my gosh, I have the creative spirit left, but I'm also in really high intensity kind of healthcare sales. And so I kind of had the best of who I was, someone who's a competitor, but someone who's also creative. And so that stuck with me. Then I didn't do a show again for another 9 years. And then after that, it was 3 years. And then so when Beast Games came, and I saw the opportunity to kind of apply to be on a show, I'm like, okay, like I've been on stage before. Granted, it's community theater. It's only in front of a couple hundred people. I'm like, I enjoy it. I enjoy that side of kind of the colors that I have, but also it's a competition. Okay, I'm an athlete. I love to win. So for me, the DNA for what that show was perfect for me. And also my why was big. So my why was, how can I go tell my son Lucas's story, and how can I look kind of cool for my other son, Jack, who loves Mr. Beast. So for me, it also helped that I just got laid off. So like I had some free time. So like when you think about all these things that line up, I'd say the biggest thing in this that I was able to kind of break this mold and kind of go, hey, screw it, I'm applying, I'm going to make it happen, is having a wife that understood my values, who understood that I had this itch. Because guess what? Being in theater when you have kids, it's not good for your marriage. Like, meaning it's like rehearsals at night and on the weekends, like the time where you need your husband the most. But she knew that I loved it. She knew that it filled me up. So when I told her about Beast Games, she was super supportive. You know, I know I've shared this story, but I got to share it here. And this is where you get to see Jen's competitive side too, is I told her, hey, I'm going to go and do this show. It's going to be great. Like, I'm giving her a hug with my suitcase. Like, I'm going to go tell Lucas's story to the world. She goes, screw that. If you're going to go, you better win this thing. And,
Dude, that is so good.
I mean, it shifted it for me. Like, I mean, this is Jen. She's like, if you're like, you don't get to go on to some vacation and have fun. If you're leaving home, you better come home with something.
Jordan, did you flash to 300 with Leonidas when he's saying goodbye and his wife says, come home with your shield or on it?
It was so real. Like it was like a poke in the chest. It was like, I think she might have said F that. Like, it was like, okay, this means business.
It was like awesome. A threat. It's like, Jeff, if you come home without a big check, you're in trouble.
Well, she meant it, because when I came home in season 2 without a big check, I felt it. Well, what do you mean? What do you mean you eliminated yourself? But
quick pause on that, Jeff. One of my favorite quotes from season 2 is when Jimmy says, "Can you imagine if you won this show again?" And you say, "Yes, I can.
I can."
That was such an epic one-liner.
Oh, yeah. So, you know, I think breaking the mold for me started with me getting back to who I was and getting back to my roots. And, you know I've talked about it again, but like when I got, this month of May, marks 10 years that I haven't had a drink. And the moment I got kind of sober from alcohol, I turned like 17 again. Like, I became a child again. I felt like, I just felt like a teenager again with, the world is my oyster. And I was being more honest and sincere and just more myself. And so for me to break the mold, I had to get back to my roots. And once you get back to your roots, like, you can start fresh again. Pairing the creative and competitive side was huge for me. And the fact that I got an avenue called Beast Games to do that is a miracle and just absolutely amazing.
So, Jeff, speaking of Jen's fiery attitude, that actually reminds me perfectly of my wife, Chloe. When I was working my corporate job and I was miserable every single day, she would tell me when I came home, she's like, we need to figure this out. We need to do something different because you're not happy. You're not you. And like, I want my guy back that's, full of life and full of energy. And that's just not you right now. I can tell like this is draining you. And that really hit me and it stuck with me. And that was the catalyst behind the idea to do what I do now. And so I think it's super important to have a partner who is equally as crazy as you are with the ideas that you bring to the table and, willing to take risks with you, because that can be a really tough point in a relationship if your partner isn't on that same page as you. Have you guys experienced that in your relationships?
Categorically. Yes. On both sides. If you are with somebody and you have this ability to create this A-frame where you're both focusing on finding joy together, on being concerned, to your point, Jordan, around, is my partner happy? And if the answer is no, then something has to change until that is no longer true. And if you know that that's the case, then I think there's an entire subconscious universe of options that becomes available to you that is not there if you feel like my job is to provide, and that's the only thing. And it doesn't matter if I'm suffering, I'm just going to soldier through it. That's where loneliness comes from. That's where, honestly, depression that could lead to self-harm comes from. And that's where loneliness and a desperation to stay in these corporate jobs that just lock you in forever. That's where so much of that comes from. And honestly, I think that your partner is where that begins and ends.
And Jordan, was like, when you were kind of grumpy at your corporate job, like, was Chloe like, hey, it's okay, what are we gonna do? Or was she like, hey, I am tired of you, bitching about this. Like, you got to figure this out. Like what? Like, which one was?
Poke in the chest.
Yeah.
Definitely more of the latter there.
Yeah. Which is awesome. Like for me, maximum growth comes at the pinnacle of support and challenge. Like, the times that I've changed is because Jen says, what are you doing? Like,
yes.
And it's like, and that is, I think, super important too, because you could easily have a partner who goes, hey, babe, we'll figure it out. The days will get better. Or it's like, no, Jordan, because I kind of feel like, Jordan, I've never seen you grumpy and kind of like complain about stuff, but I kind of feel like you'd be like kind of mad, like kind of angry. Is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm sure she was just like, what are you doing? Stop, shake this off.
And so she would call me Vacation Jordan because I was a completely different person when I go on vacation. And so I remember the year after we got married, we were, very poor, living on, not much money at all. And we got our tax returns back. And I think it was for about $3,000 or something along those lines. And she's like, we're going to take all 3,000 of that and we are going to go on a vacation. And so we flew to a Caribbean island, St. Thomas, and she planned the whole thing. We had an amazing vacation together on the beach, Caribbean island, ate good food. And I was the happiest I've ever been. And she was like, all right, we need to figure out how we can travel more because this is what brings life into you. This is what makes you happy. And so I love this topic because it doesn't have to be as dramatic as changing your entire life and leaving everything to go travel. But for me, that's what it was. That's what brought joy into my life. So once we kind of realized that that is what we both wanted to do, I was like, all right, we need to take this to the next level. We need to turn this into a career. And I was like, well, how do we do that? And this is really before social media was that big. Instagram was just photos, right? There was no reels out yet. And so content creation was still really new. So Chloe had the idea. She's like, well, let's just try. She's like, I know how to take photos. Let's go travel the world for a year. And, I'll take some photos. We can post them and see what happens. And, that was in 2018, 2019, we started traveling and we traveled for a full year and then kind of ran out of money, came home, worked some more, earned some more money and went back out there. And all the while, the feedback we were getting is like, you guys are crazy. You shouldn't be doing this. Come back, get a stable job, settle down. And I just kept thinking in the back of my mind, I was like, travel brings me to life. I'm so happy. I'm myself when I'm doing this. And so I kind of went all in on it and just locked in and focused and said, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this work. I'll travel as long as I can. If I run out of money, I can always come back and find something else. I think that's when the shift kind of happened, is when I said, failure isn't an option. And so I'm willing to put in as much work, as much time, whatever it takes to turn this into a career. And eventually it did.
Jordan, it's really interesting in the corporate world. And maybe this is much more visible because corporate is by definition a large, very established entity. And the bigger the corporation, the more true that is. But when you see someone is burned out, I've never seen somebody who is doing what they love, or at least doing something that they really believe in and that they're committed to, who is burned out. I have seen people who are doing that are working 100-hour weeks and have done so for months on end. That's what you call passion. That's what you call mission. Burnout, I have seen people working 20 hours a week on things that they don't like who are burned out. because all this drive, all this energy, all this brilliance is just getting blunted and shoved into a hole where it's not doing anything. And I think that is not throwing shade on anything. Some of those people I described that are doing what they love are accountants, and they absolutely love knowing that every single number for a corporation is perfectly organized, and that's beautiful. Others are creators. That actually does highlight our dad hack of the week. If you've been following us, you know that every single week we debut another Claude skill. And this week, if you go to our GitHub, you're going to notice there's one that's called Zero to Claude Code 101. The reason why we're debuting this one this week is we are in a golden age of entrepreneurialism where the access to making changes, Jordan, like what you did, the marginal risk cost is so much lower. And all you need to do is go in and start playing with Claude Code. And the idea that you have, this concept that you always wanted to bring to life, you are an afternoon of playing away from seeing if it's real or not. And the reason why we've got this skill for you to play with is when you go in and you go to Anthropic Academy. When you go into Anthropic Academy, you'll notice that there is a certain amount of knowledge that you need to have to get started. This tool takes you from, I don't actually know what terminal is, and I don't want to say that to anybody because everybody knows what it is now, and I don't want to sound silly, to being ready to take those courses. And the second you do, you are on a roller coaster. We want to get you on that roller coaster today so that you can be like Jordan when you grow up, even if you're older than Jordan.
So this tool is actually my favorite one that has been built so far, John. Are we going to get a little preview of it today?
Well, we are actually.
Ooh.
Yes. Here's what you're going to get when you fire this up. There's a couple different ways that you can do it, but we actually created this to make learning not just accessible to anyone, but fun. This is free, and we would love nothing more than for you to go in here and do this and then come and talk about it in the Discord, to share with us on socials what you're learning, why you love it, and honestly, to share your success stories. The greatest thing that I could ever hope to read tomorrow after you listen to this episode is that you tried this and that now you are on a journey of discovery that is going to unlock a future that just wouldn't have been possible otherwise. Here's what you're going to find when you jump into Zero to Claude Code 101. This is the companion episode. This is the companion skill, of course, for today's episode 6. But you jump in here, you're going to see a couple of definitions, Anthropic Academy. You click this, it's going to take you to Anthropic Academy. That's what this is getting you ready for. You get to choose between 3 options. This is going to be called your example archetype. When you go through this, it's going to explain your entire lesson plan. It will break it down and give it to you in examples that work within one of 3 different ecosystems. One is the human body and medicine. Let's say you are in medicine and you want to understand through the lens of something you've spent a lot of time mastering. The second one is natural ecosystems. This is going to be talking about how terminal is like the mycelium network and so on and so forth. And the last one is for people of discerning taste. If you love Dungeons and Dragons, this is going to be using a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons examples for you. But let's just say that we want to do human body and medicine. Here is how this breaks down. First is your computer secret layer. What is a terminal? Opening and navigating, files and folders, installing things, and environment basics. Then it goes into the workbench, which VS Code Tour, so on and so forth, all the way through what Claude Code is, and getting you ready to literally go from this directly into your first lesson. One of my favorite features here, by the way, it says ready. Down here, you just go right into it. One of my favorite features is this interactive terminal. So as you're learning, you actually have a simulated terminal that will display the same thing that you would get if you were actually in terminal on your computer. It's a safe sandbox. You're not going to break anything in here, but you are going to be learning along as you go. That is going to be your Claude skill of the week, what we're calling dad hacks.
So valuable. There's never been a time in history where you can do so much so quickly with so little. And so I love this, John. Thank you for sharing that. I hope everybody uses it and let us know how it goes for you.
And if you're out there and you're like, I have no clue what this is, you don't have to. Just take the chance and take the risk and carve out some time and dive into it. It's remarkable. And I literally am in preschool when it comes to it. I have not even in kindergarten, and it's changed the way I do a ton of stuff.
You know, the hottest programming language at one point was something called C++, and it was Python. The hottest coding language of today is the English language. And if you can describe what you want, you can bring that magic to life. Everybody in the world, this comes right from the Nabal podcast. Everyone in the world just got handed a magic wand. And there used to be these sorcerers that walked around creating magic universes with all these special words that they knew in these languages. And now we all have wands, and you just have to start playing with it. And all of a sudden, you'll see your Patronus come to life. I don't know.
Maybe we should make a physical Dad Squad cast wand that we can start selling.
Universal, if you'd like to partner with us, we're ready.
What a great episode for this, though, too. Like, break the mold that you're not a techie, that you don't know how to code, that you don't know how to build something through technology. Like, and it could be something as simple as something for your family, so just break the mold. By the way, I'm talking to myself because there's a lot of stuff that John's told me to do that I haven't done yet, but I have to. John,
well, Jeff, I got to say, though, what you've been able to do, your native curiosity, like, there is not a shortage. There is an abundance of knowledge and learning resources out there. There is drastic scarcity of curiosity. And I think that, Jeff, I'm just going to say it right here live on camera. What you've done with just your curiosity alone and the tools that are in front of you for $20 a month, you have done amazing things. And what you've shown me has blown me away. And I've learned watching you. That's why build a little curiosity community, folks. Like, learn with other people, play, show, practice, learn.
And Jeff, just to kind of set the stage a little bit, before John started sharing these Claude skills with you, you basically knew nothing about AI, correct?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I use ChatGPT and I use Grok, and it was just like asking questions. Hey, who won the 1978 Super Bowl? You know what I mean? Like, well, nothing too wild. And it was like, I think the same week John told me about Claude, and happened to be a guy who owns a plumbing company. He's like, man, I've been using Claude Cowork. I'm like, plumbing company? He goes, you don't understand. He goes, it's helped me do so much with my company and my team and our training manuals. I'm like, he's like, it's like $100 a month, but like, it's worth it. I'm like, $100 a month. Then John tells me more, and I'm like, okay, I need to check this out. Again, you don't even need to know how to do it. You tell it what you want, and it'll tell you how to do it. Sometimes Claude can do it for you if you use the extension. The first time I was blown away was I was moving my domain from one hosting to another, and something got messed up. My website was down, my email wasn't working. I was freaking out, like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And I just hooked up the Claude extension, told it what was happening. It went through and did it all for me. It was wild. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to become better friends with Claude.
Hey, Jordan, what did Jeff say when the plumber told him that Claude would blow his mind? No shit?
Hey, Gino, shout out to you, buddy.
Gino?
But no, yeah, that was an unexpected referral into technology through John and Gino.
We talk about AI a lot on the podcast because every single industry can implement some sort of AI and become better at your job, better at growing your business, become a better dad. I shared an example last week how I had Claude plan an itinerary for me and my 5-year-old, and he had the best time he's ever had. And so literally anyone can take very, very simple skills and break outside the norm of people who, Jeff, to use your words, aren't techies, and improve your life or your business, relationship, whatever, with simple skills. So,
Jordan, circling back on that, you should know that when I told Lexi that story, she learned to chant Wally Wombats and has done so many times since.
We'll take a group trip there at some point.
Like Wally World.
Let's film an episode from inside of Wally Wombats.
Of course, and we'll all dress like Blippi.
I may already have the hat. I don't want to talk about why.
Oh my gosh.
Speaking of breaking the mold, there's a mold that I watched get broken that you guys have seen broken far more completely than I had a chance to, but I thought about almost daily since, and that's the mold that Mr. Beast broke. I think it might be worth talking about for a second because there's so many people who are using this AI inflection point to rethink their connection with being a creator, to do something that is accelerated by being part of the creator community economy. And I have to say, if you watch how a lot of Mr. Beast works, it is very similar to how you will see the most innovative startups working, where sunk cost fallacy is aggressively abandoned, where you will see a fierce commitment to innovation and to focusing on what matters and to identifying where bottlenecks are. Where's the bottleneck? How do we eliminate that? How do we bore it out? And it is a level of consistency that happens between, again, Beast and the most innovative places in the world, like Anthropic, like OpenAI, like some of these really innovative startups. And I don't think that's coincidence. I think that's vision.
It's vision, and it's also like the inner artist in him, where it's like inner art. True artists create something new. something of their own. And like, you know, a lot of his stuff is, this is what makes Mr. Beast and why things go viral. It's because it hasn't been done before. So it's wild how they can execute on such a large scale, but also it's like to create a new, is not easy to do when there's no blueprint.
Well, he shared an example himself how if you're driving down the road and you see a cow on the side of the road, you're not going to think much of it. You're just going to keep driving. You're driving down the road and you see a purple cow on the road, you're going to turn your head and say, why is there a purple cow over there? And it's going to drive curiosity. And he said that's the motto he takes into creating his content. He wants to create purple cows for every single piece of content he puts out there. And there's so much creativity. There's so much that goes into it where it makes you turn your head and be like, whoa, what is that? I've never seen that before. You know, where so many other creators, myself included, it's like, let's just make a video. It's probably been made before, but he is trying to be innovative every single time. And I think that's super impressive.
Yeah. And another thing you always hear, and I was in healthcare forever, like you always hear that, yeah, we want to do well and do good. You know, we want to do well by the patient, but also do good. Or, you know, I want to do well in my job. I want to make good money, but I also want to be a part of something that's making a difference. As you get into a company that's growing at leaps and bounds, and especially you have a consumable company in Feastables that's doing 3, 4, 500 million a year in sales, like that's doing well, but they also do good. You look at his philanthropy channel, you look at the most ethically sourced chocolate in the world. Like it's crazy how he's able to do that at scale too. And it's like, it goes back to values. It goes back to breaking molds. I mean, heck, Hershey's could have done this for years. They never did. It's, you know, and to think that as of this episode airing, he just turned 28. Like when I was 28, oh my gosh, like I hope there's no photos of me when I was 28. I just
they look
like
the same. They look the same as right now. So
exactly. Yeah. I did have the silver hair, but it's just, it's, I think in some weird ways, we're talking about him like he's accomplished so much, which he has, but it's just the beginning. It's like truly just the beginning.
And that goes right into Jeff. When you took the leap of faith and the risk and the chance of breaking the mold to go on Beast Games, won the show, your intention of going on the show was to help find a cure for Lucas. I want to talk a little bit about what life has been like afterwards, after winning, and where you're at now.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, you know, I won but it didn't get revealed for another 5 months. So I kind of had this gestation period where I knew the end result, but no one else did. The world didn't know it. And so in my mind, I'm like, you know, man, it's going to be so many things are going to change. I wore Ray-Bans a ton during the show. Man, I'm going to get called by Ray-Ban. They're going to want to sponsor me. Super naive. But like in retrospect, I realized like everybody knows the saying, you know, if you break it, you buy it. You go into a store, you break it, you buy it. For me, when it comes to the mold, I realized if you break it, you got to build it. Like just breaking the mold. So kind of going on the show and winning, it broke the mold of, okay, man, I'm a dad who went to go tell his son's story. I happen to win $10 million. And I have this kind of unique platform, but the platform isn't anything unless I do something with it, unless I go out and build it. So for me, I realized, and a lot of this is with the help of our mutual friend, Jeremy, just had this vision of, I need to go tell Lucas's story more. I need to go. That's when we did Ruck for Rare. We built Ruck for Rare, which is a annual fundraiser where we rucked across California, 365 miles the first year. We rucked 5 marathons in 5 days in North Carolina this past year. But I need to build a platform. I need to, you know, create content. I need to interview researchers. No one's going to come save me. Even though I won the largest competition show from the largest content creator in the world, I still have to build it. So I think for me, if you break the mold, understand that's awesome. That's the first step. You have to keep building the life that you desire and the life that you want to design. Like, did you ever have, because I remember, Jordan, you talked about the first time you got paid from a sponsor and you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But I can imagine if you got that paycheck today, you'd be like, I'm not taking on this partnership. Like that's, you know, like meaning like you have to keep building on it, right? Like, does that speak to you?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point because I would have felt the same thing with you, Jeff. Like as soon as the show aired, that you would have people calling left and right. Hey, let's sponsor this. Let's do this. I'll give you another big check for a cure right away. And, you know, it just hasn't been that way. And I think that's I think every aspect of life is like that. You know, if I were to stop creating content, I would no longer get brand deals. I have to create content very consistently to stay relevant and keep building my business in order to stay at the top of my game and keep building relationships with brands. So super important to stay consistent in every aspect of your life. And John, curious your take on this.
Yeah, molds. We're talking about molds. Why are molds made? It's so you can do something repeatable, which is what most business, well, honestly, what most of life is. Systems will set you free, which is an ironic thing to say when we're talking about molds. Molds aren't necessarily bad. Molds are dangerous when you just live in the only one that somebody handed you, because it probably isn't going to be shaped like the success that you're looking for, or like the way that success will be shaped soon. Very unlikely, unless the mold that you're in is being born into a billionaire family, in which case you're probably shaped like success. You're probably going to be fine. Assuming that our listeners are not yet billionaires yet, here's the one thing I would give as a little bit of a tip. Meet with your significant other, or if you are a solopreneur in life so far, really sit down and put your 3 to 5 core values, what you really believe in, and I mean really believe in, put them on paper, and then look at how you've spent your money and your time in the last 90 days. Compare those two things. Possibly use AI to compare those two things. And really ask yourself, if these are my core values of being frugal, of being mindful, being present with my family, and you are spending money on things that aren't associated with that, gambling or other issues that you might need to stop and really ask yourself, how is this alignment working? That is especially true if you are married, if you are in a long-term relationship, and you sit down and you look at your finances and you look at your time, you may very well find that there is a big disconnect between who you think you are and who you are actually becoming. AI is able to do this for you in a way that is very objective, but it's probably not as meaningful as the subjective emotion of sitting and really looking at it. So even if you don't own a computer, you can still do this. But it really just comes down to saying, what mold are we building together? And is it the mold that we want? If it's not, let's measure that and let's start making steps to move in the right direction, as hard as that might be.
Nothing beats some old-fashioned values work. I mean, I remember in my early 30s, I was exactly where you're describing, John. I was like, oh my gosh, like I got these nice fancy leather shoes because I closed this deal and I got a nice car, but like I just felt empty. Obviously, I had a therapist. It was he was phenomenal. Took me through the values. I'm like, oh, this is what I value. I'm not doing it. So it's highly recommended. By the way, you probably can use AI to do that too.
Absolutely. Next week's skill, AI therapist.
Yes, AI valued work.
Well, beautifully said. And I think that leads us perfectly into Hot Dad's Hot Takes. I would love to hear, John, your hot take first.
Shocker, it has to do with AI. My hot take this week is this: just fucking do it. Just launch the thing. And yes, we will censor that. One of my favorite quotes is Reid Hoffman said, if you aren't embarrassed by the first version of the thing when you launch it, then you waited too long to launch it. And what that means is get out there, be embarrassed, be the first person to dance in the crowd. And if nobody else dances, fine, there will be another crowd. And then that might be your crowd. But just launch the thing. Just do the thing. The learning is in the doing and in the trying. That's it. And it's never been more true than it is now in the era of AI.
I legitimately cannot watch the first YouTube videos I ever put out. They are so cringy. They are so bad. But I just put them out there and I did it. And over time, you learn and you grow. I love that concept. Thank you so much for sharing that.
And 45 minutes of Jordan flossing.
Yeah. Hey, and then John, please roll Jordan's first clip. Thank you.
Nobody wants to see it. Trust me. It's painful.
I'll go with my hot dad hot take is the most dangerous lie a dad tells himself is that consistent thing he calls a sacrifice. Again, we all make sacrifices, but if it's the same sacrifice over and over again, that's probably a compromise from something that is of value to them. I clearly went on beast games for my family, but in retrospect, I realized like I went on it for me. It allowed me to kind of be my truest self, creative, competitive, curious, blending all these sides of me, and just kind of own it. I could have easily said, I don't have a job. I gotta buckle down, and no one would have blinked an eye. They'd be like, oh yeah, it's a smart move. So I think if you consistently tell yourself the same thing and you say you're sacrificing, it's worth exploring, worth looking into.
Hear, hear.
Love that, Jeff. Well, my hot take is pretty straightforward. There's no one right path to take in life. Our guts are very rarely wrong from what I've found. If your gut is telling you to do something and do something different, I would listen to it, right? Take the risk, take the leap, take the jump and try something new. And all that does is open up new doors and give you new things to look forward to and accomplish in life.
Love it.
And that being said, if anyone listening feels like they are not on the path that they are supposed to be on, we're going to encourage you to take that leap and let us know in the comments. Give us feedback. What leap of faith are you going to take this week, this month? And we would love to hear it. Let's talk about it.
And jump into the Discord. We're starting to build new communities every single day as we go. We're looking at curiosity communities too. So if you want to come in, talk about AI, talk about your own values work, really anything from the show and beyond, this is the place to come and find brotherhood, mission, and legacy.
And with that, we will see you next week.